Chapter 91. Entering the stronghold, amazing. Li Xianxian praised, stepping on a massive carcass of a brown-haired pig demon and scrutinizing the bowl-sized wound with admiration. Beside him, Li Xianfeng slung his longbow on his back and wore a grin of pride. How is it? My shooting skills aren't something you get to see every day. It's indeed impressive. Li Xianxian nodded with a smile on his face as he continued saying, It's a shame that you ruined such fine leather, though. Li Xuanfeng's smile faltered and was about to retort, but he was interrupted by a clan soldier rushing toward them. The clan soldier's armor was drenched in blood. He dropped to his knees and reported with despair. Young family head, Mount Yu has taken control of Lijing Town and has ascended Mount Lijing as we speak. Li Xianfeng looked at him in disbelief, then single-handedly lifted the clan's soldier off the ground. Do you even know what you're saying? He yelled. Feng Li Xianxian, visibly shaken, hastened to the clan soldier's rescue, disregarding the blood staining him. Why are they in Lijing Town? Where are the clan soldiers led by the family head? What happened to Lichuanku village? The soldier quickly reported. The family head and 1,000 clan soldiers are gone. We want to look for help from Lichuanku village, but got assaulted. Lichuanku village has also been taken control by Mount Yu. A chill ran down Li Xuanchuan's spine, and he took a step back as countless terrifying images appeared in his mind. Scout Lijing Town and Lichuanku village again to gather more information, he ordered. After pondering for a few moments, he added, Send someone to the reeds to look for second uncle. No need. Li Tongya descended from the sky and approached Li Xianxian with a grim expression. I've already scouted Lichuanku. There are currently 3,000 soldiers stationed there, with one cultivator of the Qi cultivation realm among them. Lijing Town is overrun by over 3,000 tribesmen from Mount Yu, including at least 3 cultivators of the Qi cultivation realm. Li Tongya was collecting river pure Qi on the riverbank. Upon reaching the shore of Lichuanku, he spotted torches peppering all over the village. The sight of numerous figures moving about filled his heart with unease. As he drew closer to the village in midair, the presence of people with distinct hairstyles and tattoos everywhere sent a shiver down his spine. Suddenly, a Mount Yu cultivator of the Qi cultivation realm soared into the air and unleashed a dense, black mist toward Li Tongya. Tonya exchanged a few blows with the cultivator. His profound water sword technique, empowered by the river true essence, soon proved too overwhelming for the rogue cultivator from Mount Yu, forcing his opponent into a reluctant retreat. Family head is Li Xianxian spoke anxiously, only for Li Tongya to cut him off with a shake of his head. When I arrived at Lichuanku village, it was already blocked off. There were no signs of a military formation on the riverbank, nor any evidence of fighting. Xiamping must have withdrawn or headed in another direction. Li Xianxian exhaled deeply in relief, and Li Xuanfeng's tense expression also eased slightly. Li Tongya then slapped his brocade pouch and produced a jade seal. It was a symbol of the Azure Pond Sex Authority, and it bore a short message. Endure. With a grim expression, Li Tongya put the seal away. He had sought aid through it earlier, only to receive a dismissive message after an hour of waiting. We can no longer count on the Azure Pond sect. Our next steps depend on Jianixi's actions. Li Xianling and Li Jingtian had barely rested when the door was violently kicked open. A group of Mount Yu men barged in. Among them was a figure who appeared to be the leader, brandishing a saber. His eyes lit up upon seeing Li Jingtian as he commented happily, What a fine catch this little lady is. The abrupt intrusion startled both Li Xianling and Li Jingtian. While Li Jingtian wondered how Jianixi could have located their hiding place, a few mortals stepped forward. Her suspicions deepened. Sensing that something was amiss, Li Xianling clenched his fists, silently weighing their odds. Though I have no doubt that I can easily defeat these people, I'm worried we'll draw unnecessary attention. Engaging them might attract their other allies on the streets, who could potentially be cultivators. If that happens, it'll be difficult for us to escape. The leader of the group scrutinized them before waving and commanding loudly, Take them away. 2 of his men approached with ropes to tie the twins up. Li Xianling cast a glance at Li Jingtian, only to see the subtle shake of her head, so he allowed these people to tie them up. Li Xianling tested the rope's hold and found them to be ridiculously weak. The fact that he could easily break them just by applying a little force showed that these men underestimated a 10-year-old boy like him and failed to recognize that he had attained the second stage of the embryonic breathing realm. They were led out of the courtyard. They caught sight of other youths being herded like livestock toward the forest, under the watchful eye of a figure marked with distinctive tattoos and wearing long braided hair. Qi cultivation realm, Li Xianling mumbled under his breath before he was led into the forest along with Li Jingtian. He feigned clumsiness, deliberately stumbling into the mud to smear his face with it. I've spent a lot of time at the foot of the mountain over the past few years, so everyone knows me. I'd better disguise myself in case some idiot accidentally blows my cover. Cocking his head to the side while smoothing down his clothes, Li Xianling kept his head bowed in an attempt to look as inconspicuous as possible. He glanced ahead at Li Jingtian and secretly sighed in relief. What they did in the trailer they can't do in the trailer's Estradar This Man shower routine has women questioning their partners buzz day luckily. Big Sister has remained secluded in the mountains for the past few years. Otherwise, given her outstanding beauty, everyone would be able to recognize her even through her disguise. Before them lay Big River Creek, beyond which stretched Mount Yu's territory. Li Xianling quietly touched the mirror hidden beneath his clothes, then retracted his hand with a bitter smile. The group ahead was overseen by 3 cultivators of the Qi cultivation realm hovering in the air, with vigilant Mount Yu soldiers behind them, making an escape seem impossible. Fortunately, the spiritual senses of the 3 cultivators were limited, preventing them from noticing Li Xianling below. The 2 had no choice but to continue forward, traversing through the day and night until a simple stronghold came into view. The stronghold was bustling with activity as numerous individuals had their feet bound in shackles and were strained under the weight of equipment and provisions. Escape seems extremely difficult for these mortals, but for cultivators like me, I'll just break these shackles and escape with Big Sister when night falls. Li Xianling felt a surge of relief at the thought he then saw a group of captives shackled and kneeling ahead of them on the ground, waiting for horizontal lines to be painted on their neck by the shamans of Mount Yu as a symbol of their status as slaves. Meanwhile, some men came over to undo their ropes and led the girls away. Li Jingtian was singled out from the crowd, drawing gasps from both Mount Yu men and fellow captives. Whose daughter is that? What a beauty she is. What a beautiful little lady. Despite the mud smearing her face, it was impossible to conceal Li Jingtian's sharp nose and the elegant outline of her face contours. Her clear, grayish-black eyes, inherited from Li Xiangping, were captivating in their own right. Li Xianling, now shackled and would due to Mount Yu's scarcity of metals, watched helplessly as a Mount Yu shaman marked him with the symbols of servitude. Despite the dire circumstances, his concern remained fixed on Li Jingtian, especially when a Mount Yu leader with a distinctive long braid took a keen interest in her, stepping forward to examine her more closely. Meanwhile, Li Xianling was ushered into the stronghold, where the Mount Yu men promptly secured him with wooden shackles. Those from Mount Yu were not adept in smelting, so all the metals they made were reserved for making weapons rather than restraints, which were made of sturdy wood. A Mount Yu shaman painted horizontal stripes on his neck. Li Xianling discreetly monitored the movements near Li Jingtian. A Mount Yu man with a long braid slowly descended from the sky and inspected her closely. Chapter 92. Yitian Mu Jiaomon descended gracefully from the air, prompting the clan shamans and tribesmen below to immediately drop to their knees and respectfully greet General. Ignoring the greetings of those around him, Mu Jiaomon glanced sidelong for a while. He felt his left eyelid twitching as he observed Li Jingtian, who kept her head bowed. Having been a Qi cultivator for over a decade, Mu Jiaomon had never experienced such involuntary movements before, let alone the feeling of breathlessness and the inability to avert his gaze. Mu Jiaomon began to utter a word, but the surrounding clan shamans and tribesmen nodded eagerly. "We know, General. We know," they said with an understanding smile. Mu Jiaomon, having spent so many years in the tribe, knew what the others were implying. Observing Li Jingtian's resentful gaze, he tried to clarify himself, but eventually chose silence instead of explanation. The tribesmen quickly led Li Jingtian away. Mu Jiaomon turned around coldly, then soared into the air once again under everyone's gaze. As he moved through the air, Mu Jiaomon suddenly felt an elation tempting him to abandon his usual restraint. Yet, he maintained his composure as he made his way to the tent. Meanwhile, Li Jingtian was escorted into the stronghold. She was released, and her face was washed clean of the mud before it got painted on with the colorful pigments commonly used by the Mount Yu tribe, the colors extending to her neck. She was then dressed in Mount Yu clothing, adorned with feathers, beast fangs, and shiny jades. The wild outfit and accessories actually added a regal air to her natural beauty, leaving the elders attending to her in awe as the movements of their hands slowed. By the time the lengthy preparations were complete, the sky was already dark. Li Jingtian was being led into a dimly lit military tent, where she overheard a gruff voice as soon as she approached the entrance. "The great king gave his command for us to head west in order to guard against any disturbances at the sandbank. The general was to organize the rear troops and escort the slaves to the Great Juding first. Meanwhile, I was ordered to lead a troop of 1,000 strong to pursue the foreign forces. How did it go?" Li Jingtian recognized the deep and hoarse voice. It belonged to the long-braided Mount Yu general she saw during the day. "I gave chase, but the man led his troops in the depths of Mount Lijing without even looking back. I was afraid of startling the great demons in the mountain, so I withdrew the troops." Mu Jiaomon frowned, slightly tightening his grasp around the cup in his hand as he asked skeptically, "You led the charge yourself, yet that man still managed to escape? I thought he was only a cultivator of the embryonic breathing realm." The Mount Yu tribesman who was kneeling on the ground quickly lifted his head and was about to explain just as Li Jingtian entered the tent. The beast fang she wore clinked against the jade stones. The man quickly glanced behind him, appearing equally stunned as Mu Jiaomon. Accustomed to the rugged appearance of Mount Yu women with entangled and muddy hair, neither of them had seen such a woman with bright eyes, white teeth, and a clear, piercing gaze. Both men were momentarily lost in their thoughts. Damn, no wonder why the ancestors had always spoken of the beauty of mortal women. Li Jingtian, however, observed them quietly. Seeing their diverted gaze, she recalled the dagger hidden in her clothes, which had been confiscated. She heard faint discussions about her father outside and was anxious to hear more, yet she was pushed into the tent instead. Now, in the presence of these two men, she maintained her composure. The tribesman kneeling on the ground gulped audibly, snapping Mu Jiaomon back to his senses. He shot a glare at the man, then cleared his throat. He was going to chase Li Jingtian out of the tent, but the words that came out of his mouth were, "Please wait outside." As Li Jingtian turned around and exited the tent, the tribesman stumbled over his words while attempting to respond to the earlier question. Upon calming himself down, the tribesman mustered the courage to speak under Mu Jiaomon's angry gaze. The man seemed to be blessed by the gods. He effortlessly evaded every trap we laid out and even summoned a demonic creature to his aid. The creature disregarded hundreds of them and focused its relentless attacks only on us. "I've heard enough. Get out of here." Mu Jiaomon, no longer interested in hearing the man's excuses, dismissed him with a wave of his hand. Noticing the man's reluctance to leave the area after exiting the tent, Mu Jiaomon let out an annoyed snort. The fourth heavenly layer of the Qi cultivation realm's aura radiated from him, frightening the man into a hasty retreat. As Li Jingtian was pushed back into the tent by a clan shaman outside, Mu Jiaomon abruptly rose from his seat, but quickly sat back down again. His demeanor was fraught with the same nervous anticipation he had felt during childhood when he was assessed for a shamanic orifice. He met Li Jingtian's gaze, then slowly began. Li Jingtian remained unfazed as she stared right back at Mu Jiaomon, who was physically stronger than her. "Lay a finger on me, and I'll end my life right here in this tent," she hissed through gritted teeth. Her bold statement surprisingly eased her tension. "If I die here, Xianling won't have to worry about me. He'll be able to escape easily alone." Mu Jiaomon quickly waved his hands, then gently asked, "What's your name?" Li Jingtian immediately grew wary, furrowing her brow as she quietly responded, "Yitian." Knowing she could not reveal her true identity, she quickly fabricated a name. Observing Mu Jiaomon's stoic face, Li Jingtian could not help but wonder why the leader of Mount Yu was panting so badly. And Mu Jiaomon, who was captivated by Li Jingtian's frown, felt a turmoil of emotions he had not experienced in his decades of loyal service to Jianixi. It terrified him, and he could hardly remain calm. "And oh, I must keep this woman out of Jianixi's sight. Young family head, Mount Yu has completely withdrawn." Li Xuanquan's gaze was fixed on Mount Lijing, his expression fraught with worry, when suddenly the voices of the clan soldiers below broke through his thoughts. The proclamation filled him with relief, and he glanced around at the expectant faces surrounding him, feeling a surge of responsibility. Second uncle has set out westward in search of third uncle. The burden of the family falls on me now. In times of crisis like these, I, Li Xianxian, must remain vigilant. He reminded himself sternly, clenching his fists in determination. The situation was dire. With Li Qiuyang and Chen Donghe accompanying Li Xiangping to the territories of Mount Yu, there was only a handful of inexperienced young cultivators left at home, aside from his aunt, Lu Rochuan, and Li Xianfeng, who had attained the fourth stage of the embryonic breathing realm. "We must first assess the damage and casualties at Lichuanka village and Lijing town," he declared. Lu Rochuan, who looked like she was still in her 20s rather than 30s due to her immortal cultivation, nodded in agreement as she gazed toward the west in concern. "Leave Lichinka village to me," she said. "Tianqiu," Li Xianxian called out. Wan Tianqiu quickly stepped forward, listening attentively to Li Xuanquan's instructions. "You've been stationed in Lichuanka village for many years. Since you know the area well, please accompany my aunt on her journey." After receiving a nod of understanding from Wan Tianqiu, Li Xianxian exhaled deeply and said, "I'll personally oversee the matters in Lijing town." Chapter 93. Returning to the mountain on Mount Lijing, Li Xianxian stood amidst the messy courtyard, accompanied by Li Yexing's eldest son, Li Xuan Li Xian, who had been reassigned back to this place by Li Xiangping in recent years, now assisted Li Xianxian in managing the clan affairs. With Li Yexing following Li Xiangping westward, it fell to Li Xiaowen to assume his father's responsibilities. Shaking his head with concern, Li Xianxian furrowed his brow and asked, "Still no sign of Jingtian and Xianling? We've scoured the surrounding mountains and forests, but haven't located them." Young family head. A pang of worry gripped Li Xuanquan's heart as he surveyed the messy courtyard. He grabbed a fallen wooden stool and sank onto it. "Brother Xian, Mount Yu has taken away the youths in the village." The casualties in Lijing town were minimal, but there were many deaths at Lichuanku village, including the eldest son of the Chen family. Li Xianxian nodded somberly, mumbling, It could have been worse. Our losses are manageable. The youth from Lijiang Town had already been tested for spiritual orifices. The children found to possess one recently were disciples who did not bear the surname Li. They were all safe as they had been following Li Xianxian around. As long as Chun Dongha survives, the other deaths in the Chun family don't matter. Go tell the men who are willing to retaliate against Mount Yu to rescue their children and gather at the foot of the mountain. We'll assemble a troop out of them. But young family head, this is, Li Xianxian shook his head and reassured, the family head has taken away our clan soldiers, so we'll need to assemble a new force to maintain order in the villages. This is just a symbolic gesture. Mount Yu holds considerable power now, and I won't act recklessly. As Li Xiaowen departed to carry out the orders, Li Xianxian retreated to the backyard. He pushed open the door of a small house, but was immediately greeted by the sight of an altar table that had been knocked over and an empty stone platform. Damn it, Li Xianxian muttered, feeling a surge of frustration and anger in his heart. After a few moments, the emotion subsided into a long sigh of helplessness. He glanced at the broken wooden chair where Li Mutian used to sit, then took a seat in it and stared blankly at the empty stone platform. All of a sudden, the door creaked open, and Li Tongya entered the room, covered in dust from his travels. He looked around at the scattered objects on the floor in silence. Quickly rising to his feet, Li Xianxian respectfully asked, "Second uncle, have you found any news of family head?" Shaking his head, Li Tongya used the purifying spell to brush off the dust from his clothes. "I explored the territory of Mount Yu for 4 hours, but found no traces of them. However, I did notice that those from Mount Yu have established a stronghold in the west, guarded by 4 qi cultivators." Seeing Li Xuanchuan's crestfallen expression and his gaze drifting to the empty stone platform, Li Tongya remained composed and offered reassurance with a smile. "There's no need to panic. If I couldn't find them, those from Mount Yu won't either. Xiaoping's safety shouldn't be a concern for the time being. Besides, Linger is smart. He has taken the mirror away in advance." As Li Tongya lifted the altar table, he continued, "Jianixi's surprise attack on Mount Lijiang was clearly aimed at capturing Xianling and Jing Tian to extort a ransom from us. But since nothing has happened, it's likely that Xianling has escaped when they ascended the mountains, foiling Jianixi's plan." Li Xianxian nodded thoughtfully in response. "I see. Xianling must have sensed the danger and fled with the mirror, but was intercepted and taken westward." Li Tongya rearranged the offerings on the altar table as he said, "I'll look for another opportunity to act. You focus on calming down the people at home and assessing the damage to the spirit fields. Chun Dongha and Li Qiuyang are with the army in the west, so the spirit fields should be managed accordingly. All right, be careful out there, second uncle." Li Xianxian expressed his concern, but Li Tongya waved it off with a smile. "These people from Mount Yu are mere savages, relying on sheer numbers and primitive qi. With my profound water sword qi, a few of them won't be able to pose a threat to me. There's no need to worry. If your fourth uncle, Che Jing, were here, even 5 of them wouldn't be enough to handle him." With those reassuring words, Li Tongya stepped out and headed west. Xianxian exhaled a deep breath and sat back on the worn wooden chair. The glimmer of hope caused his lips to curl up into a small smile. But it was at this moment that he noticed some wonky words carved onto the chair legs. "Harmony at home leads to prosperity in the family." The words reminded him of the old man who had spent half his life secluded in the mountains due to a rumored sighting of a cultivator of the Foundation establishment realm. Wiping away the tears that gathered in his eyes, Li Xianxian stepped out with resolve. As soon as he exited the house, he bumped into Li Xianfeng, who was carrying a pitch-black longbow on his back. Observing his urgency, Li Xianxian called out to him, "Feng." Li Xianfeng lifted his head. After Li Xianxian shared with him the conversation he had with Li Tongya, Li Xianfeng breathed a sigh of relief. However, concern still lingered on his face as he said, "Father is alone with his troops in the territory of Mount Yu. I'm still worried about him. You mustn't act recklessly." Li Xianxian immediately cautioned that Li Tongya had just left to rescue Li Xianling and Li Jingtian. He could not afford to have Li Xianfeng fall into the same trap. So he quickly consoled him, "Family head knows what he's doing. You mustn't venture into the territory of Mount Yu to search for him. It'll only cause more trouble for everyone. I know. It's because I'm still too weak." Li Xianfeng waved him off dismissively, then lamented, "If only I had attained the qi cultivation realm, dealing with those from Mount Yu or Jianixi would be as easy as shooting an arrow." "Whatever." Li Xianfeng gritted his teeth and waved his hand in frustration. "I'm going into seclusion to condense the Jade Capital Chakra so that I can attain the 5th stage of the embryonic breathing realm." Hearing his determined tone, Li Xianxian felt a pang of concern. The is breaking through really just about secluding oneself? Doesn't it involve waiting for an opportunity? Having been stuck at the 4th stage of the embryonic breathing realm for over 2 years, Li Xianxian let out a sigh and took out a jade bottle from his chest pocket. "This is the snake essence pill left over from the time when Senior Shao helped our family refine them. We had 3 in total. The elders used 1 each to break through the Jade Capital stage. This last one is reserved for my breakthrough, but you can have it first, he offered warmly. With another sigh, he lamented softly, it's a pity our family lacks a legacy in alchemy. We've been holding on to 3 snake dragon fruits for years, yet we haven't been able to put them to good use. Li Xianfeng expressed his gratitude and accepted the jade bottle. Don't worry, Brother Xian. Our family has only been on the immortal cultivation path for a little over 30 years. We can't possibly compare ourselves to those well-established clans. When we have more qi cultivators in our family, I'll find a rogue cultivator who has legacies in pill refinement and take what we need by force. Li Xianxian shook his head at the idea and chuckled. Your inclination toward violence is concerning. These legacies aren't acquired by just quickly killing a few people. We need to save up spirit stones to purchase them. Li Shuanfeng shuzha indifferently. As long as we're stronger than them, whether we mug or buy is irrelevant, isn't it? With that, he chuckled lightly and headed toward the cave, dwelling on Mount Meiche to begin his seclusion. Chapter 94. Planning an escape. Li Xianling had to labor within the stronghold for over 10 days. While the other slaves were whining in exhaustion, he was doing well thanks to his cultivation at the second stage of the embryonic breathing realm. He only had a feigned weariness to blend in. The living conditions for slaves were dire, confined within an enclosure reminiscent of sheep pen, where human waste accumulated in heaps and the air was thick with foul odors. The area was closely guarded by over a dozen Mount Yu soldiers, making any thought of escape daunting. Li Xianling desperately wanted to escape by the end of the first day. Yet he stayed for over 10 days, hoping to hear from Li Jingta. Mount Yu appeared to be in the process of building a huge stronghold for the purpose of surveillance and countering the Li family. Surveying the layout, Li Xianling considered his escape options. He concluded that the best time to escape was when moving the woods outside the stronghold. As long as he was far away from the experts in the stronghold, a swift elimination of a few soldiers would secure his escape. Although it's easy for me to just leave, it'd be very difficult for Big Sister to escape. Li Jingtian's frequent movements in and out of the command tent made Li Xianling extremely nervous. He always tried to linger around the area, hoping to find a chance to take Li Jingtian away. As Li Xianling carried wood around the stronghold, he quietly observed his surroundings and eavesdropped on a conversation between 2 Mount Yu shamans. We're setting off for the Great Juting tomorrow, aren't we? Indeed. Rumor has it that the Great King has plans to erect a huge stone platform there to perform a shamanic ceremony in order to commemorate the unification of the northern foothills. After centuries of turmoil, it seems we're on the brink of a new era of stability. Li Xianling was taken aback by what he had heard, that I must take action, regardless. Once we're taken into the great city of Mount Yu tomorrow, there will be no escape. After carefully placing down the wood he was carrying, Li Xianling reached into his clothing to consult the mirror concealed within. He quickly located Li Jingtian and promptly headed toward her direction. Liu Jiangxian was perplexed as he observed the situation through the mirror. As Li Xianling advanced westward, a mysterious energy seemed to connect with him from afar. Liu Jiangxian sensed the powerful presence that stood out like a beacon in the night in surprise. How could this be? Talisman Qi. The source of this familiar aura from the distant mountain was none other than a talisman Qi. Liu Jiangxian was certain that it was one that was bestowed by the mirror. It was not the gray talisman in Li Xiangping, but a shimmering, yellow one. The mirror's talisman Qi included various colors: gray, white, blue, yellow. Each of them corresponded to different cultivation realms: Qi cultivation, foundation establishment, purple mansion, and golden core respectively. This yellow talisman was condensed by the mirror through offerings and incense of the golden core stage. As Li Xianling pressed on, Liu Jiangxian managed to connect with the talisman Qi, but remained cautious in his approach. Liu Jiangxian fell into a brief, contemplative silence before a name slowly appeared in his mind. The disciple of the immortal mansion, Li Jiangxuan. He quickly dismissed the thought amidst growing confusion. Li Jiangxuan was merely a cultivator of the Purple Mansion realm when he was pursued by the cultivators of the Purple Mansion realm from the 3 sects and 7 gates. How could he possibly possess a yellow talisman within him? The process requires not just a corpse of the Golden Core realm, but the sacrifice of a living demonic creature and an immense amount of incense. Liu Jiangxian could not figure out the puzzle, but he could sense danger in the air, that we must avoid the Great Juting at all costs. It could be a den for demons awaiting their next victim. This incident involving Li Jiangxuan is a prime example. The forces behind the mirror's pursuit aren't limited to mere sects and gates. There's a larger power at play. Li Xianling had been anxiously pacing outside the tent for quite some time before finally catching sight of Li Jingtian. He had swapped duties with a slave who was responsible for delivering water and deliberately took his sweet time delivering the water toward the vat, also that he could bump into Li Jingtian, wearing beast leather, jade, and jewels. Cast a discreet glance at Li Xianling, who was clumsily transporting water, and she suddenly said, "Hold on." The Mount Yu tribesmen following her around instantly smiled fawningly as they awaited further instruction from Li Jingtian. Include him as well, she said. Point two of the tribesmen approached and led Li Xianling away. Walking with his head bowed, Li Xianling heard the two men chuckling. You're fortunate, child. The general has agreed to let the young lady pick 10 of her own slaves, and you're the first one she picked. Realizing that Li Jingtian had found a means to communicate, Li Xianling willingly followed them. After a simple rinse of his body, Li Xianling was unceremoniously shoved into Li Jingtian's tent. Those from Mount Yu paid little attention to etiquette, so Li Xianling, still damp, stepped onto the mat and glanced around. To his relief, he saw only Li Jingtian inside and let out a soft sigh of relief. Li Jingtian set aside what she was holding and hurried over, whispering urgently in his ear, I've gathered information about Family Head. It turned out that over the past 10 days, Li Xianping had been pursued relentlessly to the west, deep into the territory of Mount Yu. He had been raiding Mount Yu villages and rallying desperate vagrants in Jianixi's territories, causing significant unrest in the area. Upon hearing of these disturbances, Jianixi, who was raiding the clans under the governance of the Golden Tang Gate in the north, ordered Mu Jiaomon to return there to suppress the troops. This was why they were departing tomorrow. Li Xianling was taken aback as he murmured in disbelief. What is Family Head thinking? As he snapped back to his senses, he whispered back, let's not care about all of that first. Tonight, when the crescent moon is high, I'll be gathering wood far from the stronghold. That's when we'll make our escape. I'll create a distraction, and you'll pretend to leave the tent to use the restroom. I'll take care of the Mount Yu guards, and then get you out of here. Li Jingtian, concerned, whispered back, will it really work? We must be wary of Mount Yu patrols. Don't worry, Li Xianling reassured her confidently. I've been monitoring the tents where those Mount Yu soldiers of the embryonic breathing realm stay for days. They won't be able to notice us. After a moment of consideration, Li Jingtian nodded firmly and said, and if we draw the attention of a large number of soldiers, Li Xianling paused for a moment before answering, I'll leave you behind and head east to draw them away. Li Jingtian shook her head, her voice gentle but firm as she said, Mu Jiaomon wouldn't do anything to me even if I were to be captured again. But you, with a spiritual orifice, are too valuable to take any chances with. Seeing Li Xianling bowing his head in silence, Li Jingtian continued asking with a hint of concern in her voice, and what if Mu Jiaomon personally comes after us? Being pursued by a general of the Qi cultivation realm? Li Xuanling's hand brushed against the mirror hidden within his clothing. He was not that confident about Mu Jiaomon's strength after getting struck by the supreme, in profound light. Given Mount Yu's notorious reputation, the both of us will surely face dire consequences if captured. We'll either be exploited and used to coerce our family. He locked eyes with Li Jingtian and gritted his teeth. With a tone as cold as steel, he declared, if it ever comes to that, I'll kill you first before killing myself. Chapter 95. Escape. Li Jingtian froze, her expression reflecting a mix of emotions. She gently rubbed Li Xuanling's head and said softly, I'll have to rely on you to do it. As soon as Li Jingtian said that, a commotion erupted outside the tent. Mu Jiaomon's deep, angry voice reverberated through the air. You again? Who the hell are you? You've provoked us repeatedly. Do you really think we're easy targets? Li Xianling and Li Jingtian exchanged glances, then swiftly lifted the tent curtain to peek outside. A middle-aged man wielding a sword stood in midair, above the stronghold, with translucent light, blue river, true essence flowing around him. The man was calmly looking at the Mount Yu soldiers that were quickly gathering below him. He was none other than Li Tongya. His voice, amplified through mana enchantment, echoed throughout the stronghold. The Li family and Mount Yu have always coexisted peacefully. Yet, you have attacked our Mount Lijiang without cause, stolen our spirit rice, and taken our people hostage. And now you ask me who I am. Li Xianling breathed a sigh of relief and whispered joyfully, Father is here. Meanwhile, Mu Jiaomon soared into the air, accompanied by two Mount Yu shamans behind him. The 4 ridges were originally promised as payment by your demon gate. Why are you all going back on your words now? The spirit rice, spirit fruits, as well as the people, are now in our possession. They belong to Mount Yu. Scowling at the pulsating sword aura in Li Tongya's grasp, Mu Jiaomon clenched his teeth and declared, Withdraw now, and we'll spare your life. With a sneer, Li Tongya lifted his light gray sword, sending out several sharp sword chi that caught Mu Jiaomon and the other 2 shamans off guard. More than 10 days ago, Li Tongya encountered Mu Jiaomon and his group while crossing the border in search of Li Xianping. Knowing that Li Tongya was a formidable foe, they hurriedly performed hand seals to cast their spells. Mu Jiaomon and the other 2 shamans cultivated their qi through secret techniques of the Mount Yu tribe. They had never used any legitimate qi gathering method and merely consumed various forms of unrefined qi. Therefore, the strength of their spells was way inferior to Li Tongya, placing them at a significant disadvantage once more. Having meticulously honed his profound water sword technique for nearly 30 years, Li Tongya's sword auras were swift and precise. Despite their attempts to evade, the three of them found themselves struggling to keep up, and chaos erupted in the barracks like a boiling cauldron. Perfect chance, Li Xianling exclaimed as he swiftly kicked off the shackles on his legs and grabbed Li Jingtian. With one hand, he snapped the necks of the Mount Yu guards at the entrance and hastily dashed a few steps before vaulting over the wooden fence. Outside the fence, two Mount Yu soldiers stood bewildered, mouths agape, staring into space. Li Xianling swiftly incapacitated them with two golden light spells, showing no remorse for their demise. Ignoring their fate, he cast a divine movement spell on his leg, then carried Li Jingtian and disappeared into the mountain forest. His movements were fluid and swift, akin to a panther. While everyone was preoccupied with the scene in the air, it took just a short moment for Li Xianling to reach the stronghold's outskirts with Li Jingtian. By the time a few soldiers near the army tent reacted, Li Xianling had already vanished without a trace. There were no seasoned experts present in the surroundings. Those of the embryonic breathing realm had already departed to suppress the ongoing chaos. Furthermore, their spiritual sense could only be extended a short distance, barely reaching beyond 30 meters. Damn it! Mu Jiamon bellowed from above. His teeth clenched in anger. He shouted indignantly. If the great king were here, he would never allow you to get away with acting so brazenly. Jianixi, a cultivator who had attained the 7th heavenly layer of the Qi cultivation realm, had undergone a peculiar experience in his early years. His cultivation method was authentically passed down in sects, augmented by the absorption of spiritual Qi of heaven and earth. With his weapon mastery, he held sway over numerous factions in the northern foothills. Li Tongya paid no heed to his words as he silently assessed Jinixi's strength against that of Li Cheijing in his mind. Gripping his sword, he thought to himself, I'm only at the 2nd heavenly layer of the Qi cultivation realm. One of these 3 people is at the 4th heavenly layer, while the other 2 are at the 2nd heavenly layer. I'll eventually run out of mana if I rely solely on the profound water sword Qi. I must tread carefully. With a sweep of his sword Qi, Li Tongya managed to momentarily push back the 3 assailants who came forward to him. Glancing down, he observed the stronghold gradually regaining stability. I wonder if the 2 kids have escaped. If not, I must withdraw after a few more exchanges and wait for another opportunity. After intercepting a dozen moves from the 3 enemies, Li Tongya once again repelled them with his sword. Then, without a word, he turned around and fled east. Mu Jiamon's angry shout echoed after him. Such audacity! You think you can come and go as you please. He gritted his teeth and conjured a dense black Qi, but this caused his essence Qi to diminish slightly. He was using a formidable Mount Yu shaman's secret spell. The thick black Qi swirled and expanded, forming a large skull that hurtled toward Li Tongya. Watching from below, Lu Jiangxian was momentarily taken aback, sensing a familiarity with the black Qi. It felt like a product of the mirror, evoking an impulse to draw it closer with a finger and devour it. After a brief contemplation and a glance at Mu Jiamon, Lu Jiangxian decided to prioritize self-preservation over fleeting indulgences. He continued to feign death in the mirror while discreetly activating his divine sense to closely monitor Li Tongya's situation. Although Li Tongya could not identify the spell being cast by Mu Jiamon, he sensed its malevolent nature. Dodging and weaving in the air, Li Tongya attempted to evade the surging black Qi, but it suddenly sped up and collided with his back. With a booming laugh, Mu Jiamon taunted, "This shaman spell is extremely phenomenal. Your tricks won't save you, even if you flee to the ends of the earth." Feeling his limbs going cold, Li Tongya forced his mana to circulate in his body. His flight speed even decreased slightly. However, upon closer inspection, he detected no further anomalies. Perplexed, Li Tongya glanced back and noticed that despite his slowed speed, he was gradually distancing himself from the 3 enemies. This unexpected turn left Mu Jiamon infuriated and bewildered. Feeling his subordinate's stares boring holes in his back, he muttered under his breath, "What the hell is going on?" Meanwhile, beneath them, Lu Jiangxian chuckled inwardly as he studied the structure of the black Qi that had attached itself to the back of Li Tongya's clothes. Most of it was currently under the control of his divine sense that it resembles talisman Qi, although considerably weaker. The medium of the sacrificial ritual method is the mirror, but that seems to have been changed to the spellcaster. There must be a strong connection between shamans and the mirror. Recalling the yellow talisman of the Golden Core realm found in the direction of the Great Juding, Lu Jiangxian quietly noted down this newfound insight from the black Qi in his heart before quickly dissipating it. "I suppose I can study this matter when I have spare time. At least it beats spending all my time sleeping in the mirror." Chapter 96. Losses. Mu Jiamon and the 2 shamans chased after Li Tongya for some time, cursing loudly before they eventually ceased their chase and retreated with awkward looks on their faces. Tongyao managed to glance back and watch Mu Jiaomon and the others leave, a subtle smile playing on his lips. After channeling his mana throughout his body for just one cycle, the slight discomfort brought on by the curse swiftly vanished. Perplexed and pausing to reflect, he deduced that the leader of Mount Yu had yet to perfect his skills, thereby bringing shame upon himself through his inadequate mastery. After regulating his breathing to restore his mana, Li Tongya glanced around and then glided close to the ground. The river pure qi he had consumed previously rolled in his Qi-Hai acupoint, rendering him weightless and enabling him to move without his feet touching the ground. I should return first and see if those two kids are back. If not, I'll have to infiltrate the stronghold once more. Staying close to the ground and moving with deliberate care, Li Tongya flew for an hour. Upon finally sensing the presence of the two disheveled children, Li Xianling and Li Jingtian, within the range of his spiritual sense, relief washed over him. Li Xianling had cast a spell on his leg, causing them to glow in white, as he easily navigated through the forest with Li Jingtian in his arms. He was running so quickly that mud water splattered on his body. The kid avoided the eastern route toward Mount Lijing, for fear of running into Mu Jiaomon and the others who had failed to pursue Li Tongya. He deliberately picked the further route, which explained why Li Tongya had to spend a long time to locate them. Li Tongya gently landed before Li Xianling, his smile broadening upon seeing their astonished expressions. Li Xuanling's eyes immediately reddened with tears. Having endured days of being a hostage and forced to face life and death situations, Li Xianling was pent up with frustration. He released Li Jingtian, who already had tears streaming down her face, and cried out, "Father!" Li Tongya's heart clenched at the sight. He embraced his son, soothing him. There, everything's fine now. It's our fault as elders for making both of you suffer so much." With a sigh, Li Tongya lifted each of his children with one hand and ascended into the sky. Jianixi has indeed proven to be a formidable enemy, driving our family to this state. Your third uncle's escape route had been cut off, and he was forced westward. I've received no news of him since, he explained softly. Recalling the cold message he received on the jade seal from the Azure Pond sect that read, "Endure," Li Tongya gazed into the fading twilight and murmured, "We can only rely on ourselves and become stronger." "Father, I've heard that our family head has ventured deep into Mount Yu's territory. Have you already heard about this?" Li Xianling asked, wiping away his tears as he recalled the information he heard. Li Tongya hesitated, then reassured him, "Don't worry, your uncle will surely get out of there safely." Upon Li Tongya's return to Mount Lijing, he found that Li Xianfeng was in seclusion. Li Xianxian had already managed the village affairs and organized a militia of 200 to 300 people to maintain order. Once Li Tongya put down the two kids, Li Xianling went to the backyard to return the mirror. Li Jingtian was extremely exhausted from the entire ordeal. She went to the side courtyard to inform her mother, Tian Yun, that she was back safely, then washed up and retired to be eaten. Li Xianxian was also relieved to see them back and inquired about news of Li Xianping. Li Xianling shared the information he had gathered in the stronghold, but Li Tongya and Li Xianxian fell into contemplative silence after listening to him. It was at this moment that Li Tongya suddenly recalled that Li Xianping had chosen the evade death, prolonged life option when he received the talisman Qi. Feeling slightly at peace, he asked, "Let's not worry about Xianping for now. The Misty Maze formation has been broken. Did you manage to retrieve the formation flags?" Li Xianxian quickly produced 3 formation flags and explained, when the grand formation was broken, all the 6 formation flags were scattered about the mountain. I have only managed to recover 3 of them. The remaining ones were probably taken away by those from Mount Yu. Apart from that, 5 spirit fields have been plundered. We've lost over 300 gene of spirit patties and more than 10 spirit fruits. I've arranged for people to replant the fields that were plundered. The overall estimated total loss is around 20 spirit stones, he reported. Tongya nodded in acknowledgement, but Li Xianxian continued lamenting. With the Misty Maze formation destroyed, Mount Lijing is now left vulnerable without any protection. We don't have any other formations at home, though. What about one Tianqiu? Li Tongya asked as he carefully put away the 3 formation flags into his storage pouch. Li Xianxian shook his head and answered in disappointment. The kid's not a master in that field. He has only learned 2 formations out of the many formations in the Wan family's legacies. Both are small formations of the embryonic breathing realm, suitable for individual protection, but not enough to safeguard the mountain. Li Tongya, after a moment of reflection, suggested, Mount Lijing was plundered largely due to our lack of protective formations. Go set up a few small formations that could deter the mortals from coming up here. I plan to spend the next few years gathering river pure qi. If Xianping doesn't return by then, I'll sell it and see if it's possible to bring someone from the Shao family here to set up a formation of the qi cultivation realm. Li Xianxian looked troubled and said, this would mean wasting second uncle's valuable cultivation time to gather the pure qi. It's fine, Li Tongya replied, shaking his head. None of you have yet to break through to the fifth stage of the embryonic breathing realm and awaken your spiritual sense. Without it, you cannot gather this pure qi. Moreover, even with a spiritual sense, gathering qi as a cultivator of the embryonic breathing realm is exceedingly slow. We can't afford to wait 8 to 10 years. It's unfortunate that this type of spiritual qi of heaven and earth is very sparse. A vast expanse of reeds can only produce a portion of it over 5 years, he added. Hell, I Xianxian nodded in understanding, and Li Tongya continued. Besides, should another person from our Li family attain the qi cultivation realm, the Azurpan sect will likely issue higher-level spirit seeds and change their demands on the tributes. Li Xianxian paused briefly before asking, that means our Li family needs to increase our tributes, right? I wonder if we can hide this from the sect. Li Tongya shook his head and replied, there's no need to do that. Delaying 2 or 3 decades won't change the inevitable. It's not worth it to risk offending the Azurpan sect. Although they've seemed indifferent about us over the past few years, it's wise to remain cautious. The Azurpan sect's motives are unclear, and we must be wary of their actions. The Azurpan sect sees us as nothing more than livestock. It was at this moment they were interrupted by another voice that I Xianfeng strode into the room with a smile on his face. Li Tongya expanded his spiritual sense, then chuckled and asked, you achieved a breakthrough, huh? Li Xianfeng nodded and answered, I've reached the 5th stage of the embryonic breathing realm and condensed the jade capital chakra. Having a spiritual sense is a truly amazing feeling. Li Xianxian offered him a congratulatory smile, tinged with envy, and a compliment. Li Xianfeng shook his head humbly. He was worried about his father, Li Xiangping, and could hardly feel the joy over his achievement. Carrying his longbow on his back, he declared, I'll hunt some demonic creatures nearby to help support our family. Don't stray too far, Li Tongya warned. Although he knew Li Xianfeng was capable of handling a few demonic creatures around Mount Dali, he was still concerned for his safety. Li Xianfeng nodded, then left. Li Tongya returned his attention to Li Xianxian and encouraged him. You must also diligently pursue your cultivation. If you reach the qi cultivation realm stage, it will give me peace of mind. Understood. Li Xuanshuan nudda biguruzli. Just then, they heard a messenger report from outside. Young family head, a visitor from the town has arrived, representing the Lu family of Mount Tiaoyun from the east. Chapter 97. Wishes. Bring him here, Li Tongya instructed grimly after hearing the clan soldier's report. The tea must be about the Ji family. After all, the Ji family is situated between the Lu family of Mount Tiaoyun to the east and the Li family of Mount Lijing to the west. Come to think of it, it is likely that the Lu family is thinking of launching a pincer attack against the Ji family. Just as Li Tongya was lost in his flurry of thoughts, an old man in a white flowing robe was escorted into the courtyard. His hair was as white as a crane's feathers, contrasting with his face, which was rosy-colored. He held a jade scepter in hand, immediately cupping his fist at the people in the courtyard. Lu Cixi from the Lu family of Mount Tiaoyun, which is under the governance of Azurpan sect. It's a pleasure to meet both of you, he greeted with a genuine smile. Li Tongya from the Li family of Mount Lijing. Li Tongya replied in the same cordial manner, returning the gesture. With his spiritual sense, he learned that Lu Cixi had attained the 5th or 6th heavenly layer of the qi cultivation realm. The jade scepter in the old man's hand glowed subtly, which indicated its quality, one that far surpassed the sword that hung at Li Tongya's waist, a weapon of the embryonic breathing realm. Please have a seat, Li Tongya said, gesturing for Lu Cixi to sit. As the old man settled into his seat, Li Xianling and the others quietly left, accepting the tea served by a servant. Li Tongya fell silent before asking the question that lingered in his mind. What brings you here, senior? Lu Cixi raised his gray eyebrows and his smile widened as he replied. I'm here to congratulate you. Junior Tongya. Li Tongya frowned, unsure and confused by the old man's words. What is there to congratulate me for? Those from Mount Yu invaded our borders and plundered over 10 families, destroying 6 of them in the process. When I ascended Mount Lijing, the mortals seemed mostly fine, save for a few that looked oppressed, and understandably so. I'm guessing that your family did not suffer significant loss. Now, isn't that something worth congratulating? Lu Cixi pointed out quietly with a smile. Despite the softness in the old man's voice, Li Tongya was visibly tense. What are you implying, elder? He asked cautiously with a frown. Lu Cixi took a sip of tea before continuing. The Ji family has taken Mount Huaqian, and the Lu family wishes to reclaim it. The mountain is ours to keep, but we'll compensate your family with precious items and spirit stones. If we work together, we can remove our common enemy and avenge my family. Oh, what is the bad blood between your family and the Ji family? Li Tongya asked, appearing unfazed or swayed by the man's words. The Lu family actually sent a qi cultivator to support Mount Huaqian back then, but unfortunately, that person perished there, Lu Cixi revealed, his expression and voice solemn. Tongya decided to delve deeper. What's the background of the Ji family? How many Qi cultivators do they have in their family? Would you happen to know anything about that, senior? Lu Cece nodded with the same solemn expression. The Ji family currently has 2 Qi cultivators. The head of their family, Ji Dunqi, is in the middle stage of the Qi cultivation realm, around the 5th or 6th heavenly level. One of their disciples just broke through the Qi cultivation realm in recent years too. And as for their background, there's a rumor that one of the girls from the Ji family is serving someone important in the Golden Tang Gate. Li Tongya smiled wryly, before finally shaking his head in resignation. If Senior Lu is already aware of this connection, surely you must realize that we can't afford to offend the Ji family. Lu Cece chuckled at the hesitation in Li Tongya's voice before setting his tea bowl aside. Considering I decided to pay you a visit with such a demand, naturally it would have been because I've received good news. The old man lowered his voice and continued. A contact within the Golden Tang Gate informed me that they've reassigned many guards from Moongaze Lake over the past 3 years. If my guess is right, there must be some internal strife happening in the Golden Tang Gate. Oh. Pub Future adds, this piqued Li Tongya's interest immediately, and his ears perked up in response. What did the Azure Pawn sect say about this? He asked carefully. They issued an order, Lu Cece replied, producing a handwritten document branded with the word Azure Pawn. It declared a significant territorial realignment, moving the boundary between the Azure Pawn sect and the Golden Tang Gate thousands of miles northward, granting the Azure Pawn sect ownership of the entire eastern shore of Moongaze Lake. This decree was issued by the prefecture just a few days ago. After seeing it, and considering the timing of it all, I believe that the cultivator in the middle stage of the Purple Mansion realm from Golden Tang Gate must have reached the end of his life, thus leaving only a cultivator in the early stage of the Purple Mansion realm. Li Tongya's eyes immediately widened, momentarily taken aback by the news. The passing of a cultivator of the Purple Mansion realm is a significant incident that the Golden Tang Gate would surely conceal. How is the Azure Pawn sect so well informed? He asked, his voice still laced with concern. The 3 sects and 7 gates were esteemed organizations as they had at least one or several legacies within the Purple Mansion realm, but it was rumored that each of the 3 sects had more than 3 of them, while the 7 gates had only 1 or 2. On top of that, the sects were guarded by cultivators of the Purple Mansion realm. With the passing of the Golden Tang Gate's cultivator in the middle stage of the Purple Mansion realm, their influence was bound to wane, though not to the extent of endangering their survival. Lucc shook his head and replied, people like us will never know what happened between the cultivators of the Purple Mansion realm, but that's enough talking. Will the Li family participate in this or not? Li Tongya shut his eyes and took a moment to consider, a furrow in his brow. Given the Li family's current need for legacies and resources, this was definitely an extremely tempting proposal. On top of that, it was an opportunity to address a long-standing issue. Still, Li Tongya remained cautious and sought further clarification. The Ji family's connection to the important figure in the Golden Tang Gate is rumored to be their young master. Does he have anything to do with that fallen cultivator of the Purple Mansion realm? He's the grandson of that very cultivator. That lineage, now uncertain of its standing, might be looking to assert its power within the gate. They won't have time to take care of the Ji family. Lu Cece replied with emotion in his voice. Very well. Li Tongya nodded before gritting his teeth, appearing to be deep in his thoughts. I have a few conditions, though. Please, go ahead. First, should any of the Ji family's cultivation methods or secret technique manuals come into our possession, I intend to make a copy for the Li family. This is not to be considered part of our agreed compensation. Li Tongya stipulated, his voice full of resolve. Lucc nodded without any hesitation. Fine by me. Secondly, I will act independently as a rogue cultivator from Moongaze Lake, instead of someone from the Li family of Mount Lijiang. Should I encounter overwhelming opposition, I'll retreat immediately. Any loot from those I defeat will be mine to claim. Li Tongya continued. Lucc was momentarily taken aback by this demand of Li Tongya's. He laughed wryly and could not help but express a mix of admiration and envy. Your prudence is commendable. If only my own kin possessed a fraction of your foresight, I wouldn't have to worry so much. Li Tongya smiled softly, remaining quiet. Lu Cece thought for a while before finally responding. Fine. The assets from Mount Huaqian shall be equally shared. 30% of the spirit springs and fields will be compensated to your family in the form of spirit stones or treasures of equal value. Li Tongya sipped his tea thoughtfully, his eyes having a gleam in them. All right then, I would have to have you take a profound scenery spiritual oath. Without any hesitation, Lu Cece nodded and agreed with a small smile. Of course, that is only proper. Together, they performed the oath, feeling a faint mark etched into their profound scenery chakras. Tongya then asked, when shall we depart? I'll come again in 3 days, and we'll journey toward Mount Huaqian together, fellow Taoist. And to this, Li Tongya nodded in acknowledgement. After seeing Lu Cece off, he returned to the courtyard and saw Li Xianxian, who was lost in thought. I still have a jade sprout pill in my storage, a trophy from Xiaoping's previous conquests. I intend to enter seclusion to break through to the third heavenly level of the Qi cultivation realm to enhance my chances of success. He spoke softly, informing the boy of his intentions. Upon hearing this, Li Xianxian immediately rose to his feet and cupped his fist respectfully. Rest assured during your seclusion, second uncle. I'll take good care of our home. Chapter 98. Wishes 2. Li Chaijing stood before the teeming beast at the foot of the mountain, his cultivation radiating in great power. His white robe fluttered in the evening breeze, drawing admiring glances from those around him. Is that Li Chaijing, the Qing Sui, sword immortal? They whispered in hushed voices. Indeed, just look at his aura. He's surely a mere step away from attaining the Foundation establishment realm. Despite the gossip around him, Li Chaijing was acutely aware of his own situation. In reality, he was closer than a mere step away from attaining the Foundation establishment realm. As a matter of fact, he had to constantly suppress his true essence in order to prevent it from liquefying. With just a thought, he could trigger the liquefaction of the 6 chakras of the embryonic breathing realm within his body. His cultivation would then converge at his Qi-Hai acupoint to form the foundation of the Great Tao, thereby breaking through to the Foundation establishment realm. I can't keep delaying this. The sect has sent people to pressure me thrice already. As Li Chaijing mulled over his situation, the handsome man in white beside him patted his shoulder. Junior, you're at the peak of Qi cultivation realm already, aren't you? Li Chaijing sighed internally, before turning around to face the man dressed in white. Yes. Has Senior Qi come to urge me toward attaining the Foundation establishment realm? He asked. Senior Qi was slightly taken aback by Li Chaijing's response, but nodded. Yes, the sect is looking forward to it. They have also prepared the pills to help you with your breakthrough. You can enter seclusion and focus on your breakthrough anytime now. Junior brother. Li Chaijing nodded in response with an appreciative smile. How kind of the sect. Chaijing can only express his gratitude. Senior Qi nodded, though his expression changed briefly. Naturally. However, how confident are you in breaking through, junior brother? Senior Qi asked quietly, a hint of hesitance in his voice as he cleared his throat awkwardly. Li Chaijing feigned a troubled expression and answered, less than 80%. 80%? Senior Qi frowned at Li Chaijing's answer. An 80% success rate was extraordinarily high by any standard. Yet considering the plethora of heavenly treasures Li Chaijing had consumed, his mere 80% confidence left Senior Qi perplexed. Looks like I have no choice but to part with this essence-gathering pill. With a soft sigh, Senior Qi reached into his brocade pouch and retrieved a jade bottle, offering it to Li Chaijing with a smile. I have another essence-gathering pill. You may use it. Li Chaijing nodded and accepted the jade bottle with an expression of great gratitude. Thank you, senior brother. Senior Qi, concealing his dismay over the loss of his valuable resource, maintained a smile on his face as he gave Li Chaijing words of encouragement. Prepare yourself well before entering seclusion to achieve your breakthrough. Li Chaijing nodded vigorously, then descended from the mountain. As he walked past Senior Qi, a chilling remark from Senior Qi stopped him dead in his tracks. Li Chaijing, you must succeed in attaining the Foundation establishment realm. Failure is not an option, and you do not wish to face the consequences. This warning caused Li Chaijing to pause momentarily, his gaze lifting to meet Senior Qi's seemingly kind smile. Li Chaijing chuckled in response, shaking his head while he continued his descent down the mountain. Senior Qi watched Li Chaijing's retreating figure coldly as he mumbled to himself. It's just a few pills for someone on the brink of death. The old ancestor's nascent essence pill. That's a treasure we cannot afford to squander. Li Chaijing descended the mountain and took a moment to collect his thoughts before entering a small pavilion at the foot of the mountain. He climbed the slightly worn pearwood stairs, his attention drawn to a youth that was sprawled drunkenly across a square, brownish-red table. Deng Qiuji. Li Chaijing called out as soon as he recognized the man, lifting the young man up from his drunken sprawl. With a quick flick of his wrist, the moon and autumn essences swiftly gathered in his hand, forming a handful of clear lake water which he then splashed directly onto Deng Qiuji's face. It worked, and the cold water immediately startled Deng Qiuji awake. Water was trickling down his hair and face, evaporating into spiritual qi right away upon falling to the ground. The spell was cast with such finesse that it showcased the caster's profound cultivation. Blinking away his disorientation, Deng Qiuji recognized Li Chaijing in his drunken stupor and greeted him with a sloppy grin. Brother Jing, you're here early today. Li Chaijing took a seat and managed to fill an entire cup from the remaining contents of the leftover wine bottles on the table. He brought it close to his lips and took a sip before speaking. I'll be attempting to break through to the Foundation establishment realm tomorrow. Deng Qiuji, even in his drunken state, was taken aback by his statement. Tears welled up in his eyes, blinking once more as he tried to focus on the man in front of him. Brother Jing, are you really sure? He asked with concern and unsureness. Li Chaijing nodded with a carefree chuckle. We are going to get devoured, he grinned. Deng Qiuji quietly lifted his cup in response to Li Chijing's cheerful demeanor, only to find it empty. You're really optimistic, he mumbled, a frown on his face. Li Chijing smiled and said, We've already had it all figured out over the past few years anyway, and I'm the primary component, while you're the secondary component. I wonder what kind of divine elixir we'll become. After finishing the wine in his cup, Li Chijing stood up but stilled. After a moment of deliberation, he spoke, this wine isn't strong enough. After muttering these words, Li Chijing then turned and made his way out of the pavilion. His next stop was a cave dwelling on the mountain. He knocked on the stone door and waited. Not long after, it swung open. The person who greeted him was none other than his senior brother, Xiao Yuanci, with herbs in his hands. Upon seeing Li Chijing, a look of guilt washed over Xiao Yuanci's face. Aren't you going to invite me in, senior brother? Li Chijing asked with a cheeky smile on his face. Xiao Yuanci, realizing his oversight, quickly stepped aside to welcome him in with a sheepish expression. He hurried to serve tea as they sat at a stone table, his gaze lingering on Li Chijing. You've also reached the peak of Qi cultivation realm, senior brother. How confident are you in attaining the foundation establishment realm? Li Chijing inquired. My chances are not as favorable as yours, with only about 30 to 40%. I believe I'll need a few more years of preparation. Xiao Yuanci replied grimly with a shake of his head. Li Chijing nodded in response. After exchanging a few more words, he finally got into the purpose of his visit. I've come with some matters that I hope you can help me with, senior brother. What is it, Jing? Li Chijing took out a jade bottle from his pocket and showed it to Xiao Yuanci. Jian gave me this essence-gathering pill. Please send this to my family, he requested. Xiao Yuanci nodded in understanding before hesitation filled his expression. Then his voice trailed off as his eyes glanced at Li Chijing questioningly. I won't be using it, Li Chijing announced. Shaking his head with a confident smile, he proceeded to lay out several items from his storage pouch and explained, Over the years, I've earned some merit and traded it for an alchemy legacy. I heard that Xuanfeng is skillful with bow and arrows, just like his father, so I've obtained this secret technique for them. The rest I've exchanged for spirit stones, about 100 in total. I've also drawn some talismans throughout these years. So please, help me take these back to them, senior brother. Xiao Yuanci naturally understood Li Chijing's intention, listening intently to his instructions with tears glistening in his eyes. With sorrow in his voice, he proclaimed loudly, Jinger, Qingsui Peak owes you an apology. Li Chijing paused before shaking his head and chuckled lightly, dismissing his apology. Senior brother, there's no need for such sentiments. Everything I've learned and gained came from Qingsui Peak, and now, I'm merely giving back to the sect. There's nothing wrong with that, so let's not dwell on such thoughts. Despite this, Xiao Yuanci continued, no matter the circumstances, both the Xiao family and Qingsui Peak have supported the Li family and myself extensively. We will always hold this kindness in high regard. With those words, Li Chijing rose from his seat and performed a deep and solemn bow, first toward Si Yuanbai in the north, honoring him despite his imprisonment, before turning to Xiao Yuanci. Tears welled in his eyes as he made a fervent plea. Senior brother, I entrust the future care of my family to you. Jinger, as long as I, Xiao Yuanci, live, the Li family's legacy will be preserved. Xiao Yuanci expressed in great earnest, remaining in his solemn stance. Li Chijing wiped away his tears and embraced Xiao Yuanci with a smile. He heard his senior brother whisper in his ear, Li Chijing, do you have any other wishes? Li Chijing laughed. Oh, my wishes have been fulfilled. If I were to wish for anything more, it would be to convey my word to that old ancestor of the Purple Mansion realm who sought to use us as ingredients for his elixir. May his endeavor to break through to the Golden Core realm fail, and his life for. Chapter 99. Siege. Almost instantly after consuming the Jade Sprout pill, Li Tongya felt a surge of mana throughout his body, his Qi acupoint brimming with unbridled energy. This enabled him to ascend to the third heavenly layer of the Qi cultivation realm with great ease and barely any effort. The Qi cultivation realm was much more straightforward compared to the embryonic breathing realm, which was so filled with hurdles that some sects even split the Qi cultivation realm into 3 parts. Early, middle, and late stages. Qi cultivation was akin to a buildup of cultivation, turning all hurdles into a strong barrier, which in itself was the foundation. After spending a night to break through the realm, and an additional 2 more days to stabilize his cultivation, Li Tongya took a moment to reflect on his progress. That I've now attained the third heavenly layer of the Qi cultivation realm, while Jinger is likely already at its peak. I wonder how close he is to attaining the foundation establishment realm, given how the southern border is fraught with danger. I hope he's unharmed. A wave of concern washed over him as realization suddenly dawned upon him. It's been years since Jinger has gone there, and yet, he hasn't sent a single letter home. Forcing himself to push aside his worries, Li Tongya exited the cave dwelling on Mount Meiche and summoned Li Xianxian. Have the Wujia worms produced silk this year? Yes, second uncle. We've collected 6 cocoons from them, Li Xianxian reported. His clothes were dirty, and he looked like he had a terribly sleepless night. Having been occupied with taking care of the demonic creature Li Xianfeng had hunted, I Tongya rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Have someone weave the silk into a piece of spirit cloth. Li Xianxian nodded obediently, immediately heading off to carry out his order. Only a spirit cloth could conceal one's identity, as it can block the user's spiritual sense. It's a pity we don't have more silk. Making a cloak out of it would have been ideal, Li Tongya mused as he retrieved the wooden slips Li Chaijing had left behind on shelf. The cowhide rope holding the wooden strips together was extremely worn out at this point. Though Li Tongya had read these wooden slips countless times, each reading still never failed to provide him with fresh insights. Likewise, Li Tongya has been reading the Celestial Moon/Technique Manual for over a decade now. He could recite the contents of the manual word for word, yet he rarely used the technique during battles as its execution was far too exhausting. None of our swordsmanship can compare to his, Li Tongya remarked with a resigned smile. Why now? All the younger generations of the Li family had studied the Profound Water Sword Technique Manual and the Celestial Moon/Technique Manual written by Li Chaijing. That it was only Li Tongya's son, Li Xianling, who showed true promise in swordsmanship. Li Xianfeng and Li Xianxian, however, could not make heads or tails of those techniques. After reading for some time, Li Xianxian returned with a piece of spirit cloth. Tongya accepted the gray veil before testing it with his spiritual sense. Upon finding it impenetrable as he had expected, he nodded in satisfaction and carefully put the cloth away before exiting the cave dwelling. That he reached into his storage pouch, retrieving several jade bottles that were filled with healing pills before putting them away once again. Tongya then took off his storage pouch and handed it to Li Xianxian for safekeeping. It was right at this moment that he noticed Lu Sisi, who was riding grandly on the wind before alighting at the foot of the mountain. Tongya soared into the air and landed silently beside the old man. He cupped his fist respectfully. Senior Lu, he greeted with a loud voice. Lu Sisi gave a mere nod in acknowledgement, and without wasting a moment, they both took flight and rode on the wind to journey eastward. Following closely behind, Li Tongya noticed the thick, pure qi emanating from Lu Sisi, whose true essence also seemed superior to that of the qi cultivators from Mount Yu. I guess the Lu family really practices authentic techniques, probably consuming minor pure spiritual Q. Tongya recalled the conversation with Wan Yuankai years earlier when they were submitting tributes to the sect together. Wan Yuankai had mentioned that the Lu family's cultivation techniques involve harnessing the minor pure spiritual qi, and Li Tongya has finally verified the accuracy of Wan Yuankai's claim today. As they approached Mount Huaqian, Lu Sisi abruptly increased their altitude without any warning. With a swift motion, he clapped his storage pouch and a talisman appeared in his left palm. Swoosh! The talisman was launched into the sky, where it burst into a brilliant red bloom. Almost immediately, Li Tongya could see a few figures sprinting through the forest below them. The response from Mount Huaqian was swift. A protective barrier sprang up instantly as two figures soared into the sky. One of them wielded a long saber with a solemn expression. It was Ji Dangxi. You're actually on Mount Huaqian, huh? Lu Sisi remarked with a strange expression, his jade scepter shooting out from his hand. With a smirk, he added, well, that's fine by me. I guess we won't have to ambush you now. Come out, brother. And at Lu Sisi's cue, another figure emerged from the forest. Li Tongya cast a quick glance at the figure's direction. It was a bald man with stubble all over his chin. Detecting the flowing true essence within the man, he knew the figure was clearly in the middle stage of the qi cultivation realm. Lu Sisi. Ji Dangxi's gaze hardened at the sight of them. What's going on in the Golden Tang Gate? He asked, parrying Lu Sisi's jade scepter. Noticing the distressed look on Ji Dangxi's face, Li Tongya was reminded of his own turmoil during Mount Yu's unexpected assault on his family. Remembering how he had received the same cold and indifferent response from his sect, it dawned on him that the current situation mirrored the pact between Mount Yu and the Azure Pond sect. The families abandoned in their sieges likely fell under the agreements made between the Azure Pond sect and the Golden Tang Gate, which would explain why Ji Dangxi had been left in the dark. As combat ensued between Ji Dangxi and the two men, Li Tongya faced a qi cultivator from the Ji family. The young man, wielding a long pole, appeared to be only 28 or 29 years old. He seemed extremely nervous, a stark contrast to Li Tongya, who unleashed a sword that easily repelled him with a mere flick of his wrist. This kid shows great potential. However, his spellcasting reveals his inexperience despite his dedicated cultivation over the years. With another swing of his sword, Li Tongya nearly disarmed the young man, sending his long pole flying. Amidst the fray, Ji Dangxi, struggling against the two opponents, attempted to dissuade Li Tongya with a desperate plea. That friend with the sword. The Ji family is favored by the young master of the Golden Tang Gate. Do not be deceived by those two. Withdraw now, and the Ji family shall forget what happened today. Li Tongya merely let out a cold chuckle as he knocked the young man's weapon out of his grasp with barely any effort. I am from the Wan family, he bellowed with an air of defiance. Ji Dongqi was taken aback by the revelation, and still parrying Lu Cici's jade scepter, he made a swift break to the north. Don't let him escape. Lu Cici and the man with the surname and attempted to block Ji Dongqi's path, while Li Tongya swiftly caught the long pole the young cultivator from the Ji family had hastily abandoned as he fled southward. Li Tongya took note of the fleeing young man's true essence and came to the conclusion that he, too, had most likely consumed minor pure spiritual qi as well. Li Tongya rode on the wind and gave chase, his own river true essence granting him a slight speed advantage. As his target launched a few talismans of the embryonic breathing realm in a desperate attempt to repel his advances, Li Tongya felt a twinge of heartache. Those were supposed to be my spoils, Li Tongya muttered to himself as he dispelled the incoming talismans with a simple swipe of his sword. The true essence of those who had consumed river pure qi was markedly more potent than those who consumed the minor pure spiritual qi. This enhancement in vitality not only increased his flying speed, but also granted him an edge in agility. Although there was a slight delay in his ability to execute quick directional changes and leaps, this minor disadvantage had no significant impact on his overall performance. After a chase that spanned a few miles, Li Tongya breached the true essence that was protecting the young man's body with his sword. With the turn of his sword, he thrust the tip of the blade into the young cultivator's back, eliciting a pained cry as he fell. Li Tongya followed at a measured pace, watching coldly as the young man struggled in agony, unable to muster the concentration needed to cast a spell as he was blinded by the pain. As the youth reached out in a desperate attempt to retrieve his storage pouch, Li Tongya, with terrifyingly swift precision, severed his arm with a single slash. He watched dispassionately as the young man writhed in agony before mercifully delivering the final blow, bringing a quick, but bloody, end to his suffering. Chapter 100. Siege 2. Securing the young man's storage pouch and stowing the long pole in it, Li Tongya tied it to his waist. Now he had a storage pouch to use once more, but he did not waste time examining his loot, but instead headed straight for Mount Huaqian. While the three men were exchanging blows in the distant sky, Li Tongya focused on destroying the formation of Mount Huaqian. Of course, the formation on Mount Huaqian was no longer the same earth-locking Huaqian formation that was used long ago. The Ji family had reformed the Grand Formation with defensive prowess, one that reflected the peak embryonic breathing realm. Although Li Tongya managed to make a big hole in it with his sword, the gap quickly healed itself, resealing the formation. With a series of decisive strikes with his sword, aided by the Lu family's simultaneous assault at the foot of the mountain, the formation eventually faltered before shattering. Charge! As chaos quickly ensued at the foot of the mountain, Li Tongya shrouded himself and descended swiftly into the courtyard. The place lay in disarray, abandoned in haste. A quick scan with his spiritual sense revealed that the inhabitants of the mountain had fled toward its base. Li Tongya curled his lips and frowned in frustration, discovering that the storerooms had already been cleared out. He surveyed the area from his vantage point in the sky, then quickly located the entrance to a cave dwelling. Unfortunately, it was guarded by a resilient formation that would only falter if Li Tongya were to use a dozen sword qi. All of a sudden, he was interrupted by a thunderous noise. Rumble! Lu Cici's true essence was dispersed and his body was almost coal-black, scorched and burned. He plummeted into the forest, coughing up blood. His condition was extremely critical. The bald man quickly retreated, bewildered and fearful of such unleashed power. What kind of talisman was that? Ji Dongqi did not answer his question, but his complexion was ashen. He swung his saber at the bald man, who quickly evaded his assault. That man from the Wan family. I'm outmatched. I need backup. Ji Dongqi yelled, panic peeking through his voice. Li Tongya cursed under his breath as he was forced to give up his exploration of the cave dwelling. He soared into the sky above Mount Huaqian before launching a sword qi directly at Ji Dongqi's back. Wan family's remnants. Ji Dongqi bellowed, his gaze fierce as he turned around and deflected the sword qi with a swift side slash. Ji Dongqi's true essence was sharp and powerful, just like his swordplay. Li Tongya parried the blows with his own sword aura, but was still forced to move backward despite his strength. Meanwhile, the bald man's persistent spellcasting forced Ji Dongqi into a defensive stance, only for Li Tongya to launch another sword qi attack aimed precisely at his enemy. Caught in a difficult position, Ji Dongqi struggled to fend off attacks from multiple fronts. As the battle wore on for about a quarter of an hour, the cries of the Ji family's members gradually dwindled. In a desperate attempt, Ji Dongqi unleashed a talisman, hoping to turn the tide of the battle in his favor. Oh no! Li Tongya and the man quickly withdrew. Thankfully, the talisman's effect was minimal, producing a few pathetic sparks before finally fizzling out. Nevertheless, the momentary distraction allowed Ji Dongqi to flee. That was a trap. While the bald man chastised himself for his carelessness, Li Tongya had already given chase to Ji Dongqi. Come on, we mustn't let him escape, he called out. urging him to follow suit. Ji Dongqi, after such a prolonged struggle against the bald man and Lu Cixi, found his stamina waning. In his desperation and panic, he had utilized his precious talisman, only for Li Tongya to join the fight. With his reserves of true essence nearly depleted, Ji Dongqi had no choice but to escape northward. Ji Dongqi's escape was abruptly cut short by the Jade Scepter, compelling him to halt and defend himself. Lu Cixi, despite his injuries, managed to propel himself through the air again. His bloody legs appeared to have been fractured and blood trickled from the corner of his mouth, and yet he still gathered the strength to issue a fierce command. Don't let him escape. The intervention by the Jade Scepter allowed Li Tongya's sword to close in on Ji Dongqi. Faced with his inevitable fate, his eyes darkened as he came to understand the utter bleakness of his situation. As Li Tongya observed Ji Dongqi's defiant stance, he deliberately slowed his attack, allowing the bald man to catch up. He held his sword at the ready, fixing his gaze on Ji Dongqi. With a defiant laugh, Ji Dongqi discarded his storage bag, hurling it far away before turning to face the bald man. The saber in his hand shone with a golden light, its force indicating that Ji Dongqi was channeling all of what was left of his remaining strength into this final stand. Li Tongya and Lu Cixi exchanged glances, then seized the opportunity to secure the discarded storage pouch with their true essence. The bald man, overwhelmed by Ji Dongqi's relentless attack, retreated in alarm. Undeterred, Ji Dongqi pressed on. He raised his long saber, then brought it down on the bald man's chest with lethal intent. The bald man sidestepped swiftly to evade the attack just in time, only to see a cold glint of the tip of a sword protruding from Ji Dongqi's chest. Ji Dongqi coughed up blood, slowly turning his head around, only to see Li Tongya shaking the blood off his sword before returning it to its sheath. Ji Dongqi collapsed onto the ground with a loud thud, the ground beneath him turning a crimson red. The two men cast another 2 spells on Ji Dongqi to ensure his death. Completely. 8 celebrities targeted by harsh body shaming comments. Estradar, do you remember her? Take a deep breath before looking at her. Buzz de Lu Cixi, having secured the storage pouch, flew toward the 2 men in the sky. He had already bandaged his legs and had renewed vigor. Who's coming with me to raid the Ji family's stronghold on Mount Huazhong? He asked cheerily. You two may proceed without me. I'll search Mount Huaqian, Li Tongya replied with a sigh, looking as though his enthusiasm had waned. The valuable items like spirit stones and spirit items were mostly in Ji Dongqi's storage pouch, which Lu Cixi now possessed. Although Lu Cixi was physically further away from Ji Dongqi at that moment, he still managed to snatch away the storage pouch. Mount Huazhong was the Ji family's ancestral ground. Since Lu Cixi had taken a profound scenery spiritual oath to equally divide any treasures that he finds, Li Tongya was naturally not interested in going there. He would much rather explore the cave dwelling on Mount Huaqian. The man by the surname nodded, then departed with Lu Cixi. Li Tongya then made his way back to Mount Huaqian. The situation on Mount Huaqian was a mess, with cries and pleas for help echoing around him. Approaching the cave, he found the entrance to be guarded by members of the Lu family who acknowledged him as a senior as a show of respect, having witnessed his earlier combat alongside Lu Cixi. Li Tongya gave them a brief nod before spending about a quarter of an hour breaching the protective formation of the cave dwelling. He ventured inside, which made the members of the Lu family exchange uncertain glances with each other, ultimately choosing to remain outside the cave dwelling. Upon entering the cave dwelling, Li Tongya was greeted by the sight of a bubbling spring, its waters clear and inviting. His spiritual sense quickly discovered several jade stones within its depths, which he promptly retrieved and secured. Putting away the jade stones, Li Tongya pushed open a stone door, which led to a room with a tea table and several stone stools arranged around it. On the table rested 2 jade bottles of different sizes. The smaller one contained a jade sprout pill, which Li Tongya pocketed with ease. But the big jade bottle was far too big for his storage. Li Tongya assessed its contents with his spiritual sense and found it to contain a type of spiritual chi of heaven and earth. It was of such rarity and preciousness that Li Tongya decided to secure the bottle to his waist directly. The room held little else of value. There were also several heartfelt letters from Ji Dongqi's sister, which Ji Dongqi had carefully placed under a few wooden slips. The most recent letter was dated 5 years ago, so the young master of Golden Tang Gate goes by the name Siddhi. As Li Tongya finished reading the letters, the frown on his face gradually gave way to surprise. The Azure Pond sect has been increasingly active in recent times. We must remain vigilant. Should Mount Yu venture eastward to encroach upon our territory, we must not engage them in direct conflict. The great shaman has been biding his time for a century, waiting for someone capable of unifying the northern foothills. This individual is intended to be offered as a sacrifice. We must never be the ones to end his life. The wrath of a cultivator of the Purple Mansion realm is beyond our means to withstand. A chill ran down Li Tongya's spine as he quietly put the letters into his storage pouch. It all makes sense now. Jianixi's eastward assault against Mount Lijiang, the unexplained silence following the northern incursion into Golden Tang Gates territories, and us being told to endure. It seems the great shaman is willing to pay any price to facilitate the invasions by Mount Yu's factions, all to shield Jianixi. Such a cold, calculated plan. Sweeping through the tribes to forge the first unified power in the northern foothills of Mount Yu in a century, only to offer their leader as a sacrifice. Chapter 100. Siege 2. How malevolent. I wonder what chaos would ensue in the northern foothills following Jianixi's death. Feeling as though a shadow had been cast over him, Li Tongya lifted his gaze to stare at the ceiling of the stone room. It was as if he could visualize an immense hand manipulating events from afar, moving chess pieces across a grand board laid out across the rugged landscape and under the expansive sky.